All right, all right. So let's get this thing started. Let's talk about the government shutdown. Now, who knows if the things are going to come to fruition or not? And yet, I think it's wise to be at least somewhat informed around this. And while I'm not the foremost expert on government shutdowns or politics, and I definitely don't want that to turn into this, I think we need to be educated to some kind of capacity. Now, this has come from NAR. All right. So this is from NAR. This is National Association of Realtors. This is the Realtor magazine, uh, news article. And so it says possible government shutdown and what you need to know. So what do you guys need to know as real estate agents? And it's going to go through, and we're just going to kind of talk about this at a high level. So at the end of the day, NAR's responsibility is to us and to protect the real estate economy, and so it wants to make sure that we understand what is going on. So it says this. It says NAR has been monitoring the government program's importance to the real estate sector to assess the potential impact of a shutdown. And so then it goes through. So the very first one, it says National Flood Insurance Program. All right. So the National Flood Insurance Program, when we're looking at this, this is a program that lenders are going to require if your property is in a floodplain. All right. So you have a property that is in a floodplain and the lender does not want to add that extra risk. And so they have you go get a floodplain, a flood insurance policy. It says this, it says during a lapse of authority, the NFIP administered by FEMA cannot sell new or renewal insurance policies. Okay, cool. So what it's saying is if you need this policy, it cannot sell you one. And if you need to renew your policy, you cannot get a new renewed policy during this time. It says, however, if you already have a policy, it's going to be good until the expiration dates and claims will continue to be paid unless there's no more funds into the program. All right. So I think that's important, right? So if we were to think like, okay, we are trying to like, if you guys have a deal right now, this is where this would matter. If you have a deal right now that is going to be closing, potentially tomorrow or the next couple of days, if this thing goes through, which again, we have no clue if it will or will not, then they will not be able to get the new claim. And it says this, it says, but, or the new policy, but it says, if you do have any claims that are going to happen during this time, then unless the accounts run dry, your people will still be able to get their policies taken care of. So then the second thing that we go through, it just says government supported enterprises. So as we're looking through this and we're looking through what we have going on, it says that during these previous shutdowns with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they have continued normal operations since they're not reliant on, the appropriate funds. However, there are four key areas for consideration. And again, we see flood insurance. So flood insurance pops up again at the very bottom. That bottom bullet point says, hey, we actually have to have an insurance policy in the check that's associated with it. The verification of social security numbers as they're going through, this could be an issue. And just transcripts for your employment and tax transcripts. And so when we're looking at this, yeah, this could absolutely have some kind of impact that if we're going through and we need to have this done, but yet we do know this is probably not going to affect anyone closing the next 1 or 2, maybe 3 days. All this information would already be done. So this is more of your beginning, middle stages to where this could be an issue, right? So this could be one of those things that if the government shutdown does happen tonight and you have a closing, by Thursday, maybe Friday, this could be something that we might want to figure out from our lenders. Are we going to be okay? And again, with your flood insurance, probably not very big, but yet your social security and your tax and your employment verifications, this could be something. The IRS, let's talk about the IRS, right? That's super exciting. It says at the time of this, right, the IRS has not published any shutdown contingency plans. But what it does say is it says that when it comes to government programs, those guys will still be working. It'll just be mostly the ones that are auditing you will not. So there's that. All right. So the IRS, they'll be allowed to open up their emails to be able to make sure that the government checks are going through and getting paid. And yet they're not going to be taking taxpayer phone calls, issue tax refunds, release liens and levies, or perform most other taxpayer services. So there's that piece. Your rural housing programs, it says under a shutdown, the U.S. Department of Agriculture will halt insurance of new direct and guaranteed home loans, and any scheduled direct loan closings will be postponed. It says pending conditional commitments or guaranteed loans are still being reviewed. It says, however, closings for guaranteed loans that do not yet have a guarantee will proceed only at the lender's risk. So if it's already been guaranteed, you're okay. Right. Again, so we're looking at this thing and saying, well, we won't be issuing anything new, and it will be lender discretion if it hasn't already been guaranteed. So here's one thing: if you're dealing with some of these rural areas, this could be something to keep your eye out on. VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs will continue to guarantee home loans during a government shutdown, and lenders may keep processing applications. All right, cool. Guys, you're doing a VA loan, you might see a little bit of friction because all their staff isn't in place. And yet all VA loans are still going to be going through. They're going to be able to issue them. They're going to be able to move forward with them. The EPA. All right. So it says most employees will be furloughed. This impacts various regulatory programs and compliance activities, including wetlands, and under the 404 program, which I have no clue what that is, but it's lead-based paint disclosure, renovation, repair, and painting program. So if there's anything going on with you working in wetlands, which I don't think any of our agents are, or if there is any issues around lead-based paint, then you are going to be affected by that. And then it says HUD.
In what way would we be affected by that?
But that's what I'm saying. I really don't see any real issue outside of HUD enforcing that you did not do. There's a lead-based paint disclosure. There was a program that company had to go out and maybe remove, right? So maybe your clients go through and they select, yes, I want to have the lead-based paint inspection, and they find lead-based paint, and now it has to be remediated. Then there could be some issues getting the remediation done because there is no one coming out to be able to verify it, would be my only assumption.
Got it.
Yeah, I can't imagine this being a big deal either. I mean, outside of just checking some boxes.
Okay.
Then your HUD during the federal government shutdown, the Department of Housing and Urban Development contingency plan allows many key housing programs to continue at a reduced capacity. All right, so they're going to go through. HUD is still going to go in there. And so we probably won't see any disruption for HUD. SBA loans, they're not going to do any SBA loans. All right, so no new loans will be issued or approved. It says that they'll continue to close previously approved. So if there's anything that's already been approved by an SBA loan, they'll move it forward. What was interesting, though, is when I look at this, the longest government shutdown we had was 34 days. Back in 2018 through 2019. And what gets even more interesting when they're surveying NAR members, they said 75% of agents actually experience nothing. Nothing changed in their business, their day-to-day. The only thing that they saw, 11% said they had some impact with their current clients and potential clients. And again, your potential clients make sense, right? If they can't go out and they can't go get their employment verified, or they can't get their tax returns, like I guess I could see that. Absolutely. Some issues going through that could be something that pops up. So then I went one step further. I said, okay, cool, there's your national high level, but what about Colorado? Like, how could Colorado be impacted? And so I looked through this, and when we go through this is when the federal government could shut down and what that could mean for Colorado. So again, we won't know anything until tonight. And if you're monitoring it, I guess you could watch it. I mean, I'm going to pop back on forth on X to see what kind of goes through this. And then it's just giving you like the layout of kind of all the stuff and like who the loudest people are, because that's all politics is like what side of the party can be the loudest. And then like they're like, okay, you're going to be the loud one for us. You're going to be the loud one. And then when they're tired, you pop up. I feel like that's what politics is. And so when we go through and we look at this, all right. So firstly, air traffic controllers and TSA guys, they're essential. They're still going to get paid. So if you have any flying or anything that you want to do, it's going to be safe. Well, as safe as it has always been. And you guys know, for those that know me, I'm not a flyer. So we're going to still see flying. So they're not going to cut air traffic controllers, TSA, like all that's going to be good. What about your mail? The post service is still going to be sending you mail. All right, so there's your first two, right? You can still fly. That's not going to impact anything in Colorado. And your mail, you're still going to get your mail. So all the stuff that you have ordered on FedEx and UPS, it's still going to be there. And obviously Amazon is not affected by this. So all of your stuff on Prime will be there on your Prime delivery channels. And so what about benefits and security, right? What about the net programs? Well, Social Security, VA, and other benefits will continue. Social Security benefits, VA benefits, and other benefits will continue. It says there could be some delays because there's going to be less people working, but it's still going to happen. And it says in a shutdown, the first to feel the pinch could be the mothers and young children who rely on women, infants, and child food programs. And that, again, that's a could. I feel like that's conjecture that they threw in there. Right. I mean, we just went through and they said that all the benefits are going to continue to go. There's going to be lesser of a staff working it. And so this was conjecture that they absolutely throw in there, which we're not going to fault anyone for that. I mean, everyone has their own opinion. It says that benefit cuts off almost immediately, according to Colorado's WIC dashboard. Just over 100,000 clients were enrolled in the program in August. And then it's big bullet point, right? When we go over here, it says there could be missed paychecks and lost jobs. Now, that's the big one. You see that I highlighted that because I wanted more information on that one. I feel like that's the one where that's the big threatening one that I think has been there. And we'll talk about that here in a second, but we'll go back to it. That I did throw in ChatGPT. I said, ChatGPT, I'm not the smartest dude in the world. Give me more on this. Help me understand it. So we'll talk about that. National parks is the big question mark. It says during the shutdown, during the Trump administration, kept national parks accessible to the public, even as many Park Service employees had to stay home. At the time, there were reports of damage and trash with the unattended parks. Okay, so you'll still be able to go to the parks. Please throw away your trash, everyone, on this call. Let's not make it, a mess for whoever has to take it back over. The weather forecast will keep coming. The National Weather Service said, guys, that you will still be able to get your weather through them. And cool. So what we have seen is the biggest program will be the WIC program, according to the Colorado Sun, that the WIC program will be the biggest thing that most Coloradians will face as a challenge if they are a part of one of those 100,000 people that are enrolled in that program. Now let's go to ChatGPT because, again, I was telling you that this statement right here, the White House is also threatening mass layoffs of federal employees in addition to the furlough notices if a shutdown happens. Now, this has been the thing that I've been seeing circulating the most is this right here, because they said this is unprecedented. They said it's not impossible. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be lawsuits that happen over it, but it's saying this is unprecedented. So first thing I did, I said, tell me more about what this really means. And I said, cite your sources. So it says, here's the difference. So let's understand the difference between furloughs and layoffs. Furlough, guys, is temporary. Not only is it temporary, that when these people, when the freeze ends, when the shutdown ends, these people also get their back pay. Now, here's the deal. I understand that most people are living paycheck to paycheck. I totally get that, and I empathize 100%. But I want everyone on this call to see that these guys will get their back pay. And again, I understand that's going to cause some disruption, some friction, and some frustration in their lives. And yet furlough means you're still going to get paid. It's just going to be later down the road. Now, this is the difference, the layoff and the reduction. This is permanent termination. All right. This is what the Trump administration has said is what they are going to do if this thing does not get resolved tonight. He has instructed people with the inside the government to actually dive a little bit deeper. All right. It says historically, the government shutdowns have relied mostly on furloughs. Non-essential workers are temporarily suspended from work without pay. Okay. And then it says, and essential services, law enforcement, national security keep running. Once funding is restored, furlough workers return and they're made whole. Okay. We got that from this nifty little graph that it gave us. So then it went through and it talks about this Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, which there's an issue. This is the memo that's been out there, and this is the one that I was like, okay, I'm really interested in this. This is what started me on this whole path today, where I'm like, all right, let's talk about this government shutdown. So then it goes through, and we'll talk about this, guys. I know I just kind of skipped over, but we're going to jump to it. And so it said, here's your legal and political questions. There's a debate over whether the White House has the authority to do this. All right, we'll see what it looks like. Federal court has previously blocked such guidance, and some lawmakers and unions call the threats intimidations. All right. Guys, this is all this has been back and forth. Both parties, that's all they're doing. Who can be the loudest and who can get the most disruption? And again, this goes back to Ron, right? Ron in Coffee Talk or in the team rally said one day, do these people believe it or is it politics? And the answer is yes. All right. So we go through this political impacts. Well, there could be loss of institutional knowledge. All right. So long tenured employees might lose their jobs. We could see some disruption with some programs. Employees could be frustrated. Absolutely. Totally get that. And if we go through, this could actually set some precedent for how things are happening in the future, right? Where you threaten the shutdown and they're like, oh my goodness, remember last time when the shutdown happened, they actually fired a bunch of people? We have constituents that we have to look out for now. All right. So they're saying that like these are all the things. And it says this White House threat actually goes beyond turn off your emails and sit at home unpaid. Because this one is different because of this threat. So then I was like, okay, I hear all this. I said, but based on this statement, can you tell me any of these potential, right? This OMB, can you tell me any of the programs that are truly at jeopardy? Like, I was like, tell me who these people are. Like, I want to know who could wake up tomorrow without a job. Because again, we're Americans and it's super anti-American to be wishing for anyone to not have a job. So it says this, the memo instructed agencies to create a notice around people that have discretionary funding lapse as of the 1st. All right, so firstly, all they're doing is they're putting together paperwork that says all of these programs end on the 1st. Also, those programs end on the 1st, these ones actually don't align with the current administration's priorities. Okay. And so what they're doing is they're saying, hey, if we have annual appropriations, right, it's not mandatory funding. And so it's funding that has been given out that actually do not align. Well, we want to know who those departments are. And I was like, okay, give me more. And it says, but here are the ones that are safe. Social Security safe, Medicare safe, veteran benefits safe, military, law enforcement, immigration, which is ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, air traffic control, thank the Lord. All those are statutory programs. Now I get it because there's been a lot of loudness. If you guys are watching any of the noise, like a lot of it has been, I think, around this Medicare, right? I think we hear both sides right now. We hear one side saying they're looking to cut Medicare, and we have another side that's saying we want Medicare for only U.S. citizens. And I think that's where the friction is right now. And again, not making this political, I feel like those are the 2 points that I've been hearing. Right now, the loudest, that has been this Medicare. Well, according to ChatGPT, and obviously we're not going to trust Skynet 100% of the time, it's saying that the Medicare is not being changed for anybody. And it says, why is there no list? Like, why can't you give me a list? And it's saying because there isn't one. All this is right now is this is just the agencies going through and they've been tasked with something, but there is no like real list of all this. So I find it interesting because we won't know anything till tomorrow. We won't know if there's a government shutdown. We saw from this Realtor magazine that the longest one lasted for 34 days. So we could see a month. It'll take us into November. We saw that when we look through this, VA is still going to go through. We might have some other issues that popped up as far as some lending purposes around if you need something from the IRS, like the IRS isn't going to be functioning how they're supposed to be functioning. If you're doing anything in a floodplain, there's going to be some issues. So we're going to see this, like it's going to happen. Now, the bigger issue, I think that, you know, in the perfect end of world scenario, that if you have a client that's in a floodplain and their policy lapse and then they have a flood, yeah, that would super suck. But do I think that banks are going to go out and say, hey, you let your flood insurance lapse and now we're going to call your loan due? No, I don't think that's real. So we'll see what this looks like. Sorry if I missed it. Do you know how much shutdowns there have been? No, that's what we're saying. Nothing yet. That no, you didn't miss anything. Like what this is saying is when we're looking at it, not a lot is going to happen. And in Colorado, the one thing that they're concerned about, which is a valid concern, is the WIC program, where there's 100,000 people that could see some disruption to their services. And the people that are, you know, on, you know, Trump, let's just, I mean, Trump's hit list, right? If that's what you want to call it. They're saying that that list is being made by the departments. Like he hasn't even put out that these are the lists that he wants to look at. He says, you guys know what my mandates are? Oh, in history. Do you know how much shutdowns there have been like in the history? No, I think that if we were to look at this thing, it says, well, here, let's do it. Let's check it out. We got ChatGPT. How many government shutdowns have there been in the last, what do you guys want to do, 50 years?
And the full ramifications of those shutdowns.
Do what? I'm sorry, Greg, hit me with that one more time.
And the full ramifications of those shutdowns.
Oh, yeah. And what was the biggest impacts they had? All right, let's see. Let's see what this thing does. Let's see what Skynet tells us. All right, since 1974, there have been 21 shutdowns. Most were only 1 to 3 days. The longest one, the 35 days, which doesn't match up to our 34-day one, but it's still the same time period is what it gave us. It says most recent 2019, no shutdowns since then. Okay. Even though there have been threats. And again, like that's just politics these days. So here's your biggest shutdown. So 2018 through 2019, the longest one in history was around the border wall. 800 federal workers were furloughed without pay, in which we understand they got paid afterwards. I get it still. Delayed paychecks to people. And it says that at $11 billion, $3 billion permanently lost was your economic disaster. There was $3 billion gone. National parks were left. IRS refunds delayed. Housing aid stalled. Okay, we get that. 1995 to 1996, 21 days was over Medicare, education, environment, and public health funding. That seems awfully large. That is a large scope of stuff. Anyways, it says 284,000 people furloughed. Federal services suspended. Visa passport processing. All right, guys. So your visas and your passports, which reminds me, I still got to do mine. Obviously, maybe not tomorrow. But public opinion largely blamed Congress. And Clinton's approval rating rose. Okay. Affordable Care Act, or Affordable Care Act. Yep, get this. So Obamacare, 16 days. And so a lot of those guys we lived through very, very recently, right? 850,000 people, national parks and museums. Guys, I'm seeing a lot of national parks. Please clean up your trash. Smokey the Bear will appreciate it. But again, when this stuff happens, they are saying that the economy is going to take a hit. Now, what's interesting is they're also saying that a lot of these people that might get not furloughed, but these programs, because it is also programs. It's not even just saying like this is like special departments. This is saying there's also programs that will get defunded. Will be interesting because who knows what that will make up. Probably not $24 billion, but 1980s, the shutdown, 3 days. So guys, like outside of like these outliers, 35 days, 21 days, 16 days. I think the only thing though, that while we have a lot of people talking about how this is just trash talking, which it could be, no one has a crystal ball. Well, I think we also have to keep in mind that this was the administration that was in place that took it 35 days. And it's pretty much all the same people in power. not much has changed since this time period. All right. So when we look at this thing, who knows? All right. Guys, there's that. Again, I want you guys to be as educated as possible. I don't want there to be any fear in this room, because at the end of the day, it looks like our business will still be operational. Now, who would be impacted? If you have federal employees, like if you're working with a federal employee, they might not get paid tomorrow. And so this could impact a closing. And while I hope, again, I don't want any American to be jobless, it's very real reality what we could be walking into tomorrow. Let's switch gears. I do want to talk about this with all of these ads popping up everywhere, including Kevin Bacon. It says, new lawsuit accuses Zillow of deceiving home buyers. All right. You're like, thank God Charles isn't talking about Compass again. So when we look at this thing, though, and we are talking about the Zillow deceiving home buyers, check this thing out. This gets interesting. I've been hearing more and more about this. I don't know if you guys have been hearing anything about this, but a lot of people that I follow, like, this is their latest and greatest thing. So Zillow. Guys, if we were to talk about your real estate commissions, and we understand that everybody wants a piece of what you guys are making. All right, everyone understands, right, that your guys' paychecks, they want a piece of it. We got stagers coming in, we have photographers, we have title companies, we have mortgage, we have leads, we have everyone wanting a piece of your commissions. Now, one of those things that we have going through, we have Zillow. Zillow has come through and they say, we're here for the people. And while real estate agents are the ones that are giving us all of our money, we care about Americans, and wherever else Zillow is. And so what's interesting, though, as we go through and we do this, what we see is that who's paying Zillow? Well, real estate agents are. Real estate agents are paying Zillow, and Zillow is one of the biggest aggregates of people coming through and raising their hand. And then what Zillow does is it sells zip codes to people. When people raise their hand, someone says, I'm interested in 123 Main Street. And Zillow says, hey, here's an agent. And they send all of your information over to an agent, and then the agent calls you. And what's interesting, that I think that we've been seeing like Zillow sells 4 leads for every home that's sold, which is crazy, right? So Zillow's pushing out like 4 times as many leads as there are closings in the United States every year, which is just wild. And so anyway, what this is doing now is that Zillow's like, well, we want more piece of the pie. We can't sell more zip codes. We're not creating more zip codes. And so if we're not creating more zip codes, how are we going to make money? Because we can only raise it so high, and they have, right? If you were to look at the cost for a zip code, we have places in Arvada that are thousands of dollars a month for a zip code. Well, so then what Zillow did was Zillow went through and they said, okay, well, we also want a piece of the commission. All right, so then Zillow went through and they said, all right, we're going to charge you for a monthly fee, and then we're going to charge you a piece of every one of your commissions. We want a piece of it. And that's why they have a brokerage in every state now. And that was their play. So they opened up a brokerage in every state so they can collect a real estate commission. So then that wasn't good enough either. So what did they do? They rolled out Zillow Title and some other auxiliary businesses. And this is where this lawsuit has popped up now. Because Zillow said, well, we can charge the agents a monthly, and we can charge the agents a closing fee. But at the same time, what do we also want? We want them to use our auxiliary services. But if they don't use our auxiliary services, we're going to lose money. And we're not going to make anything. So what they do, they started threatening agents. And they said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Real Estate Agent, we are going to start monitoring how many of your consumers that you talk to, that we give you, how many make it back to our auxiliary services. And if you're not hitting the percentage that we expect of you, we are going to start slowing down the lead flow your way. And we're going to give it to another agent that actually is getting more people to the auxiliary services. And then what happened? Well, it got wind, right? What happened from this point is it goes through and it says the largest US online real estate portal is now facing proposed class action lawsuit accusing the company of using property listings to steer home buyers to its affiliated agents. And so what's happening is you actually think that you're calling the listing agent. You're not. You're calling someone that bought the lead. That person that bought the lead is being threatened by Zillow, and Zillow's telling them, hey, if you don't push them to our auxiliary services, we're going to stop funneling leads your way. So they are forcing agents to steer back to these services, and they are pushing them that way. And so we're going to see where this goes. I don't know if it's happening or if it isn't happening. And there's been a lot of people that are popping up. And what I find unfortunate about all this, the most unfortunate thing is that Zillow has gotten so many eyes on them, and there's been so many agents that are just looking to turn and burn and be very transactional in how they do business, that they're also not willing to raise their hand and say, yes, Zillow has said this to me. A lot of them have been private about it, and they said, I will not testify. You cannot use my name is what I've been hearing. But they are saying, but this is absolutely, we are absolutely getting these threats from our sales reps. Our sales reps are calling us and telling us that they are going to divert lead flow. We'll see what happens here, guys. This is very, very interesting. And then on the coattails of this, CoStar has started pushing their lawsuit back again against Zillow. We'll see what this looks like. Also, while I don't have this slide up, there has been another buyer commission lawsuit, kind of like the one that we just went through for sellers, except for they said that now the buyers have been disproportionately affected by real estate practices, which I don't understand how the sellers can get hosed and the buyers at the same time. Like it seems like a either or, and we already chose one. So how are we going to say the buyers now? But that did just pop up. We'll see what that looks like on the next coming months. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but what I did look through, it says mom and pop landlords dominate the single family rental market. So when we talk about this and we start thinking about the Airbnb bust, and when we start thinking about Blackstone owning all the real estate agent and they're just gobbling it all up, right? What's interesting is you look at this thing, here it is. It says mom and pop landlords are the largest owner of single family rentals. Now, again, this is a percentage based. So it is, it's different, but it says 1 in 5 properties, 90% of the investor pool owns only 1 to 5 properties. And then when you go into here and it's like 1,000 plus properties, only 1.6% of investors. So again, the numbers can lie, right? Like when we look at this is just saying like the vast number of investors are 1 to 5 unit owners, where only less than 2% of the investor population owns north of 1,000, which is kind of interesting still, right? So when we look at this, this is a lot of mom and pop investors. It doesn't mean that Blackstone doesn't own a bunch of properties. It's just saying that for the most part, the people that are owning these are people looking to, create a legacy for their family. So then when we look at this, again, it says the composition of U.S. single-family housing market according. It says single-family homes and then single-family rentals. So we look at this, there's 86.5 million single-family homes, and there is 15.7 single-family rentals. So again, not a huge population of rentals. So that means that maybe condos, apartments, townhomes maybe are going to be the outlying share, but as far as single family, 15.7 million, let's round it up, call it 16. But then it goes through, and what I did like was this interest rates on outstanding mortgages. I do like this slide. So when we look at this, guys, this should give us hope, right? It says that this is where a lot of people like to live. 70% of US mortgage borrowers have a rate under 5%, according to the FHA. Or FHFA. And so your financing agency for your national mortgage database has gone through and they said, this is where people are. And so when we see this, we see 10% of people have a 5 to 6%. Well, we know that this 3 to 4% will never happen again. And that accounts for 50% of the population lives here. And so like this is the area where we're going to go, and we're going to see a lot of people start waking up, which is cool though, because when we look at this 6%, 20% of people have a rate over 6%. Well, that tells you that there's still people buying in a market with 6% because people still need housing. And yet, this is where we are going. And what we also didn't talk about when we were looking at this other information is that when we're going through and we see these government shutdowns, what we also historically have seen is interest rates go down. So we'll see if that's still the case, if this thing does happen, but there's also another plus side as we're looking at this. Interest rates on outstanding mortgages, again, here you go again. This is just showing you where people live. So when we're looking at this, you're 21 to 25, less than 3%, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 9, over 6%. So we're actually seeing a lot of people comfortable living here. Like that's where a lot of people are. And here is where people are sitting that still have a mortgage on their home. Kind of an interesting slide. Well, let's switch it over. Let's talk about Housing Wire. Logan Motoshami, the lead analyst for Housing Wire, and we go through, we're not going to talk about spreads or any of that fun stuff, but let's talk about purchase mortgage application data. Guys, this is exciting. You guys are in the season of renewal. We're going to be in October. We are going to be in Q4 tomorrow. Wednesday, October 1st, 2025. A little over 90 days left until 2026. We know that we are historically in a 60 to 90 day market. And anything that you do over the next couple of days is going to show up towards the end of December and or in the beginning of next year. And this is telling you that there are still people raising their hand that are saying that they are interested in how much they can afford. And our only job is to get into emotional proximity to these people. We need to reach out to them, make sure that they understand that we are their real estate economists of choice. When we're looking at this, we see a little bit of a dip in weekly pending, or a spike in weekly pending sales. So guys, sales are still happening. Things are still going on in this seasonal market. And this is what's interesting. What's interesting is that we would have talked about agents going to sleep as jack-o'-lanterns and waking up as Easter bunnies. That would have been my default in saying, guys, we're at a very seasonal market a handful of years ago. But yet we have not been in a normal market since 2019, right? 2020 broke a lot of different things. And so I was talking to my in-laws at dinner on Sunday, and they were talking about seasonality and when's the best time to sell a house and put the home on the market because they're planning on leaving, Aaron and I. And what this looks like is the right homes are still selling. Buyers and sellers are coming online and offline very fluidly. The only thing that is truly dictating home buyers at this point, and sellers, because most sellers become buyers, is interest rates. It's the cost of money. We have an affordability issue here in the United States right now. And we just looked and we saw that people are still going out getting 6%. But yet we have seen lesser and lesser people going out and buying houses, just the people that are super motivated. The people that are getting the jobs, they're getting transferred, that are getting deployed, that are losing their jobs, that are getting promotion, they're adding kids, their kids are going off to college. Like those people are still buying and selling houses. And what's cool about this is that when we're seeing these interest rates go down, and we know that the seasonal market is not what's truly dictating what is happening inside of the United States. It's truly the cost of money. Well, as the cost of money is going down, guys, it's going to be gangbusters. And our only job is to be having as many conversations as possible. Your weekly housing data, again, guys, we're going to surpass this 2019. And remember, 2019 is a normal market. So we have 18% more inventory now. We have a lot of options for your buyers. As your buyers are putting their purchase applications in and figuring out what they qualify for, you have so many opportunities. And we know from our friends over at the title company, $10,000 is the average concession. So when you're looking at this and you have a $10,000 concession, you have more opportunity than you have had, 18% more opportunity than we had back in 2024. And interest rates are coming down, guys, is the perfect storm for buyers. We're right in line here in 2025 for just new listings. And again, new listing data is a little bit skewed in the sense to where if homes did fly off the market, right? Multiple offer situations. They moved in like a month, or I'm sorry, not a month, a day, 2 days, 3 days. This data is not being captured. But your price cut percentage, here we are. 42%, let's round up. 42% of all homes in the United States have taken a price reduction. We know that in a normal market, it would have been one third of all homes. So we're slightly elevated. And again, what's happening is we're having motivated people. They put the home on the market. They realized that they weren't going to get their price. And now they're reducing to what they believe that the market is dictating. Now, here's the deal. We're still seeing homes sit. We're still seeing average days on market tick up in certain areas. And so when we're going through, we need to be having conversations with our people, because if you're chasing the market down, you will never, ever get ahead of it unless you take a big drop. And that's what I was talking to my in-laws as well, is they have a house that has been sitting in their neighborhood, and that's what they're comparing what could be happening to theirs. And I'm like, well, this is the deal. They started probably $200,000 ahead of where they should have on this home, and they're not taking big enough hits down. And so the only way to destigmatize this home is probably to delist it. And 30 days later, put it back on the market with a new agent at the price that makes sense. And I said, this was not legal advice. Please don't tell your neighbor that, because I'll get in trouble. But then when we go through, guys, we're at jobs week, because remember, this is rear view facing data. So here we are. So we got jobs week, and it says, but only if the government doesn't shut down. So no one, right? No one knows what's going to happen later today. And it says the bar is very low, right? It says the jobs leak data from Jerome Powell blessed job growth from 0 to 50,000. So this is what was interesting. This is probably what the most interesting thing that happened when they were talking, when Jerome Powell came on, like 2 weeks ago, is that he came through and he said that he was actually okay if there was zero job growth. That would be okay, and as long as we're not going negative, which is kind of scary that that's like the low bar that we have at this point. That if not another American gets a job, but we actually don't go backwards in jobs, that we're going to say that's a-okay, and we're not going to drop rates to re-stimulate the economy. So that's actually really, really scary and eye-opening and super frustrating all at the same time. That literally the person that is in charge of dropping rates, because that's what he is, has said that if not another American gets a job, and as long as we don't go backwards, we won't have to drop rates. We're actually okay with that. That would be the gold standard going forward. So we'll monitor that as we go forward. But let's talk about rates, guys. Here you guys are. This is 1 month in time. I think this looks pretty good. This looks pretty solid. Right, we're seeing it lower a little bit, flatten out, lower a little bit, flatten out kind of stuff. This is where we want to be. This is where we want to be, and these are the conversations that we want to have, and we'll let the economy kind of move around from here. And so again, bankers have the ability. I did see an article where bankers actually did make a lot of money. I think it was something like $1 billion or something like that, because again, they're borrowing money at lower rates because the Fed did drop it, but they're not giving those savings on to consumers yet, because this is what happens. And this is what we have to keep in mind. So when we're going through and we're hearing that the Fed's dropping rates, but yet we're not seeing a whole lot of stuff happening with mortgages, it's because if the bank were to drop the mortgages, below a certain threshold, they're going to see refinances start popping up. And then what has to happen is that they have to refund these origination fees, and they lose money, and they're not in the business, right, to lose money. They're not the nonprofit. They're not the March of Dimes. They're a for-profit company. And so that's why you guys don't see this direct correlation from Feds drop rates and we see mortgage rates drop. They stay elevated for some time because they don't want the floodgates to open, because then they lose money. I don't remember what that number was. It was something like $1 billion is what the banking industry made off of mortgages this year because of how high they were. And then as the Fed was loaning them money at lower rates, they weren't dropping it significantly fast. They were still keeping it elevated. So they made a decent amount of money. So guys, I think that as we're going through, we're going to see what the rest of today holds for us. And we're just going to monitor the situation. We're going to pivot if we need to pivot.